Hello, my name is Julie, and today I'm finding out if I have read a 5-star for every letter of the alphabet. On Instagram, I have been making bingo board reading challenge monthly things for, I think, the 4th anniversary is this month. I have, for the last 3 years, done an annual challenge, and my annual challenge that I chose in 2026 was alphabet. So in January, it's reading a book that starts with an A or a B, excluding A and the. For February, C and D, so on and so forth, combining some of the harder letters at the end of the alphabet. And I realized when I was making my reading calendar for the year, being like, okay, I should probably read this book here, there, whatever. There were some letters that I definitely did not have as many books for, and I realized, I wonder if I actually have a book that I love for every letter of the alphabet. So I decided to do a little challenge. I went and tried to challenge myself to come up with, off the top of my head, not looking at my shelves, not looking at my Goodreads, a book that I rated 5 stars for every single letter of the alphabet. And this is going to turn into a vlog if I haven't, and you can check how long the video is. My rules here are that the letters X, Z, and Q, I think, I do not need them to be the first word, but I do need it to be like the first letter of a word in the title. I think. I don't know that the letter X I'm gonna have a lot of luck with. We'll see. Over to Past Julie to test herself and find out if there are any letters missing. Hello. I am dressed up fancy because I had my big promotion presentation today, but I decided because I did that big accomplishment today that my present would be that I am going to be doing this today. I'm gonna try to do this off the top of my head. The book must start with a letter, unless it's the or a at the beginning of the word, and I do not want to repeat books in series, so I only want to count it once. I'm gonna try doing this off the top of my head. Unfortunately, I did have this idea a while ago, so like there's a couple of things that I already have at the top of my mind that it's not gonna be entirely, but we're gonna just start. A. This is one I thought of ahead of time. Astrid Parker doesn't what? What does she not do? Fail. Astrid Parker doesn't fail. A couple other ones. Whenever I'm like, oh, a 5-star, A Dowry of Blood is like the first thing at the top of my mind. I'm going through my bookshelves, which are that way, without looking at them. A hard one to get would be Oathbringer. I was thinking of I who have never known men. My X and my Z, I am expecting that to be within the word and not the starting letter. I am going to try to get a Q, though. I'm going to try to get books that I read as an adult as well. The Writing Retreat. Nope, can't spell. Books that I read this year, The Memory Police, or rather in 2025. P, Pride and Prejudice. Are you kidding me? I didn't immediately think B, Bunny. C. I actually think C is going to be hard for some reason. Hello, Beautiful. Ooh, Chain Gang All Stars. Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. What are more of the books that were my favorite? I, Intermezzo, Hello, Beautiful, J, James, F, Free Fallin'. That's what I'm thinking of. K. What are the other books? The Spell Shop. Ooh, The Vanishing Birds. For V. I'm really trying not to look around my house. There's no books this way. If I just look straight this way, there's no books. My top 10 books of 2024. The Vanished, oh, it's not Vanishing, it's Vanished. Vanished Birds. Ooh, Recursion by Blake Kraut. Was that a 5-star? Ooh, Ready or Not, for sure. If I have to do a Q within the title, The Traitor Queen is one. The Spell Shop, The Vanished Birds, Chain Gang All Stars, The Bluest Eye, The Haunting of Alejandra, The Will of the Many, which I already have a W. I haven't done The Lightning Thief. Should that count? I didn't read it as an adult. I feel like that doesn't count. N-T-U. under. Us Against You wasn't a full 5-star, actually. I can't even think of books that I've read that have the letter Z in the title. I was trying to look up, because I'm doing my annual bingo challenge, books with Z in it at all that are on my TBR, and the only one that I have is Alba Diaz. Oh, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. At what point do I give up? I've been doing this for 5 minutes, probably closer to 6. The Final Empire. That might be, is that kind of cheating? I've already put a different Brandon Sanderson book on here. And I could replace it with a different author that I've already got on here. Our Missing Hearts, also by Celeste Ng. Never Let Me Go. Nothing. The nothing. The na. Q. Why can't I think of a T off the top of my head? Oh, Vampires of El Norte would have also been a good V. I'm actually going to do that because it doesn't include V. U. Urgent. Unless. Used. Until. Under. I mean, I know books that do start with U, but I don't think I have anything. Yesterday. I have You're Invited stuck in my head, but that's a book I haven't read yet. I don't know. What's the T? I can get a T. E, Everything is Tuberculosis. I already got that. K, Love Light Farms and The Kiss Quotient. That's another book that has a Q in it. I need to get an N and a T for me to be happy with myself. I keep coming up with the titles. Turnstile, Tainted, Twist, Terrible, Tucker, Test, Tumble, Thank You, Thirsty. I want to read Thirsty by Jazz Hammond. I don't know. I'm looking over at my bookshelf. I actually don't have my glasses on, so I can't see the titles of the books. Actually, most of the books are turned away from me, which is funny. The Night. I did give The Night Circus 5 stars. I don't know that I would hold to that rating, but that is a book I've given 5 stars. I'm thinking of the Rick Riordan series, with the Egyptian series. It's like Throne of Fire or something like that. I'm like, okay, sure. Tress of the Emerald Sea. That's another Brandon Sanderson book. I don't want to put, what was the F that I came up with an F recently. I don't want to put multiple Brandon Sandersons on here. I want to challenge myself. No Exit. No Exit is I'm going to change No Exit. Get No Exit in there. Y. T is one of the most common letters in the alphabet, and I can't come up with a T? To All the Boys I've Loved Before. That I was old enough then to count it. I don't know about a Q, a U, an X, a Y, or a Z. So let's find out. We are going into my red pile, and we're going to go to the bottom. Z, Zone. Okay, so I definitely don't have, ooh, You've Reached Sam for a Y. Did I not come up with a Y? I didn't come up with a Y. I did love You've Reached Sam. You have to stop this. I was a little bit too, Yellow Face for sure. 100%. I have not read a 5-star book that starts with a Z. So there's that. The next thing we're looking for, see if I have a U or a Q. Uglies, Unbecoming of Maya Dyer, blah, 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 blah. Lots of U's. I don't have a single U 5-star read. There's none. I don't have any. Gonna be a lot of T's. What T's did I embarrassingly not think of? Oh, 1,000 Ships. 100%. 1,000 Ships. That would have been a hard one for me to think of, though. The Traitor Queen could have worked for the T. Transcendent Kingdom by Yao Jesse. Do I have that? Oh, Turtles All the Way Down is literally right above my head. That's embarrassing. Where's my Q? Q. R is going to go front. P. Q. Q. Queen of the Tierling. Queen of the Tierling, for sure. We're going to search for the letter Z and look for it in the title. Intermezzo. And I mentioned intermezzo a couple of times. Okay, so that is within. I Killed Zoe Spanos is at least at the beginning of the word, so I can give it that. and then X. The poet X. And that's at the beginning of the word. I do not appear to have a U. These ones, Poet X and I Killed Zoe Spanos, are both not the first letter of the book. I'm not going to be able to find anything that's an X. I might be able to find something that's a Z, but I don't believe I've ever read a book that starts with a U that is a 5-star. I'll look one more time. This is including books I haven't read yet. I could read The Underground Railroad or The Unworthy. I have read a bunch of U books. A Utopia Avenue I DNF'd. Us Against You was a 4-star. Upon a Burning Throw was a 3 at max. Unworthy actually has bad reviews, but I want to read it. Untethered Sky by Fonda Lee. Unruly by David Mitchell. The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead, and Ulysses, which isn't fucking happening right now. I have never read a book that starts with the letter U that was a 5-star. I've read a lot of 4 stars. Let's go through them. Uglies by Scott Westerfeld. I gave a 3-star, and then I continued on in the series. What was wrong with me? I gave The Unbecoming of Mara Dyer 2 stars. I gave The Unbroken 4 stars. Undead Girl Gang, 3 stars. The Unexpected Everything, 4 stars. And Unkindness of Ghosts is like a 3.5. Unravel Me, 3 stars. Upon a Burning Throne was 3 stars. And Sorry, Us Against You was a 4-star for me. I think it was like a 4.25. It was like a strong 4-star, but that is probably my favorite book that starts with a U that I've ever read. On my TBR, there are 4 books that start with the letter U. One of them I could not get my hands on locally, so I'm going to read the 3 books that I have on my TBR that are the letter U, and hopefully I come across a 5-star. If I don't, we might have to do this again. So start thinking of all your favorite books that start with U. So the first book I'm going to be reading is The Unworthy by Agustina Bastarrica. This is about a cult that has arisen after a climate catastrophe, and our main character is wanting to rise up the ranks, and there is a new girl who has come to this little convent who seems to have something different about her. I have previously read Tender is the Flesh by this author and absolutely adored it. It was a very upsetting read that I started out with no rating and I eventually decided to give it a 5. So I know that this book is not nearly as well received. People weren't excited about this as much when they were reading it and everything, but I am really looking forward to this one. Then I'm going to be reading The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. This is a book that reimagines the Underground Railroad as a physical train system underground. And our main character is Cora, who is running away from Plantation, and we follow her through multiple steps of the Underground Railroad trying to find safety in different places. And I do know that this at least a little bit takes place in North Carolina, which doesn't bode well for her. Other than that, I don't know a lot about this book. I actually have read Colson Whitehead before and I didn't like it, but it was by far his least popular book. So I am not deterred by that. I'm going to pretend that book doesn't exist and just go into this book without a problem. And the only book that starts with the letter U that I own is The Unworthy by David Mitchell, who, if you're unfamiliar with him, he is a British comedic actor. He's on a lot of panel shows, which is how I know him. I love watching British panel shows. And this is a nonfiction that is a bit of a more comedic, casual take on the rulers of England, from the mythical King Arthur into the Anglo-Saxon kings, and then from William the Conqueror all the way down to Elizabeth I. So this was a book that I had just happened to watch a video of David Mitchell online talking about his favorite kings and everything, and at the end it was like, oh, by the way, he has a book out, and I was like, he has a book out? So I texted my dad and he bought it for me for Christmas or my birthday. I'm really hoping that this is a fun time for me and not like a total slog, because I know that this is like a thick, heavy paperback, but I am hoping that this is going to be a fun educational time. Without further ado, let's go complete the alphabet. Hello. I think I'm just past the halfway mark of The Unworthy. This book is a post-apocalyptic horror where our main character, who is an unnamed narrator, has found herself in the Sacred Sisterhood. So this is a cult that has formed in the ruins of an old monastery. We know pretty early on that the world is not what it used to be, that the world outside is very volatile, And guess what? So is it inside this church. There are like different levels of being part of the sisterhood, and men are not allowed in. But there's a man that none of them have ever seen that is just referred to as him or he, who seems to be somehow giving orders. And it's kind of unclear to me how much of it is him, because like it's a voice that all of them have actually heard. It's not just like a passing down the word of someone else sort of thing. Like they've heard the voice. Everyone who climbs the wall of this monastery, if they are not contaminated, they could be a servant, they could be an unworthy, they could be a enlightened or a chosen. The chosen are deeply mutilated, and they're like put into one of these three groups that are supposed to focus on different ways of worship to their god, which is different than the erroneous god and the false son and the something mother, which is supposed to be Christianity. They specifically talk about crosses and stuff like that. But if you are enlightened, you are like put in a certain room and never seen again. And our main character is pretty devoted to this cause for the most part. Our main character wants to become enlightened very, very badly. This book is her writings. She says that she's stealing ink that used to be part of the monks. She's making ink from berries that she finds outside. She's using her own blood sometimes to try to write her accounts down. And her accounts are kind of hard to follow sometimes. They are not always super clear on what's going on, and they're rather scattered, just from like an entry to another. And there are things that she's purposefully not wanting to talk about. While I do feel like I tend to like cult-related books more than the average person, I didn't think that this synopsis really stood out to me. But it was still something that I wanted to try because, you know, you can't let lowly rated horror hold you back if you are going to read horror. I did notice that the blurbs on the back of this book are from Paul Tremblay and Lucy Rose. Lucy Rose wrote The Lamb, which was a pretty popular horror last year. Paul Tremblay is, you know, Paul Tremblay. By now, I've read Paul Tremblay twice and not liked him. That makes me wonder what I like Lucy Rose. I don't think that this is a book where we're going to get a lot of answers. I feel like we will get an answer to what is happening to the people within the monastery, who this he is. I hope we get answers to that. I'm liking the vibe of it. It is written in a way that I would describe as gothic, like constantly talking about like bugs and dirt and devotion through pain. Like that feels very gothic to me, but I am finding it a little hard to follow. I feel like I'm having to use my brain more than I should in order to get through this. Like, especially because there's not that many words on a page. I don't think I would have identified this author if I didn't know that this was Augustina Basterica. I don't know where the emphasis goes. Honestly, if you told me it was like translated horror, I would have asked if this was, who wrote Fever Dream? Vibes-wise, liking it. We do know in the synopsis, they tell us that there is a newcomer who joins the ranks, and that kind of shakes up everything. And that has happened a little bit before the 50% mark. I don't have strong inclinations as to what's going to happen next, other than like, oh, we're going to try to get closer to the new girl and everything. I'm not feeling super strongly about it. Even though I do like the writing, I'm not very fixated on the actual happenings in the book, if that makes sense. I'm going to finish this today, unless I fall asleep, which is very possible. Hello, I just got off of Ariel. I'm like actually making freaking progress. I like hit a plateau with Ariel for so long. I don't know 100% what all of it was, but I'm finally like, okay, I got it now. I don't know, maybe I'll put a video here. I might not be able to show you a video from today. I think I put the camera somewhere where you could see people in the background, but a couple of days ago, I actually finished The Unworthy, and I just forgot to update you. I did not feel strongly about this book at all. There's so many books that I've read recently where my comment is not a lot happened. And I'm feeling that with this book. I don't know. I guess I didn't 100% get the point of the sisterhood as much as I was anticipating. It's talking about people, specifically women, being taken advantage of in times of crisis and stuff like that, but like it felt more like vibes than stuff going on. And the vibes weren't bad. I mean, it was terrible for everyone involved, but they weren't vibes I didn't want to keep reading. I just didn't think there were that many things. There was definitely a plot twist that I did not anticipate being a plot twist at all, that I was like, oh my god, what? That I had to like go look up the Wikipedia summary of the book and be like, was I hallucinating this whole time? No, that was a good plot twist. The ending definitely felt like a book you would read in English class, not nearly as much as Tender as the Flesh does. I mean, like, I could see the elements it has here or there of doing sort of similar things, but I felt like the word economy in Tender as the Flesh is so good. Like, every single scene felt a lot more purposeful than it did in this book. Like, it just felt like, oh great, this girl's getting tortured, and then that girl's getting tortured, and then this girl's getting tortured again. I liked the relationship that we see between the main character and the new girl. When we were talking about sort of the apocalyptic situation, I think I had a little bit more interest, but I just don't think that this had nearly as much of a point as I wanted it to. This was not a book that I was super anticipating being 5 stars, even though this is an author I've loved. There's nothing wrong with this book. There's nothing bad about this book. This is definitely in the 3-star range for me. And, you know, whenever she releases another thing, I'll read it. I haven't read her short story collection because I'm not really a short story person. Not a 5-star, so we're continuing on. And I've actually already started, because it's been a couple days anyway, my audiobook of The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. And the problems that I immediately had with Zone 1 are not in this book already. So, like, I think we're good. I did not know until maybe a month ago that The Underground Railroad, the book, is about if the Underground Railroad was an actual railroad. Our main character is Cora, and she is a 3rd-generation enslaved woman. We heard very briefly about her grandmother getting taken and her experience and everything, but Cora, she's in Georgia. They have transferred everything to being cotton on the plantation and everything, and there were 2 brothers who ran it. One who was less bad and one who's absolutely terrible monster, and the one who was not as terrible died, and the other brother takes over both sides of the plantation. The man that Cora is seeing, named Caesar, is like, we should run. I know a guy. And they take this chance on this like white guy that he knows. He's never helped any slaves before, try to get them on. And at the point that I've gotten to, which I'm probably at the quarter mark, they have just gotten onto like a boxcar in the Underground Railroad. So I'm listening to the audiobook of this. It's Bonnie Turpin. She's like one of my favorite audiobook narrators. I can recognize her voice literally anywhere. Like, I started the audiobook and I'm like, that's Bonnie Turpin. Literally hours before, had commented on somebody else's post that had audiobook narrators that are like, then I was like, Bonnie Turpin's so real. Like, I love her. You know, I think she's doing a good enough job. I don't know if it's like the copy my library has. I don't understand why some audiobooks are just like of such lower sound quality than others. Like, who controls that? It feels a little bit fuzzy. I'm not being grabbed by the audio itself. And I kind of had a little bit of a sprint through the end of my audiobooks in February. So like, I have not been in the mood to listen to the audiobook. So I don't think I've been given it like the world's biggest chance here, but I am going to continue. I'm going to keep going. This was the candidate that I thought was the best suited, like probably most likely to be a 5-star because it's such a beloved book. And I'm worried that maybe my experience with it could taint what could be a really good book. So the writing style has been good. And like, that was something that I was like looking out for, because I thought the writing style in Zone 1 was so pretentious, like using big words when you absolutely do not need to every single second. And this one is like, we've got the vocabulary, but it feels very natural and everything. And so I'm like, great, good. I have been doing well with this book so far. Nothing really to report except for my audiobook experience so far. So I'll get back to you. I'm getting blasted, but I think I'm over the 50% mark of the way through The Underground Railroad. This book is so much faster paced than I thought it would be. Not in a like action way, just in a like time skippy, we are moving, we are going through stuff. So the way that this book is set out, like, I almost don't want to say too much about the plot because I'm like, well, what's a spoiler? She ends up, like, there's suspicion on her because of the running away, so she is having to go to multiple locations, and she is currently stuck in North Carolina, where there were stricter rules than in South Carolina. In South Carolina, they were actually, compared to a lot of other states at this time period, there were less cruel rules. In South Carolina, like, things seem to be better, and there's like communities for Black people and everything. Things seem to be okay, but people are on her trail, and so she's having to leave. But there's more sinister stuff under the surface that she is realizing, and she's like, she's wanting to save people, but she has no idea how to do that. And now that she's in North Carolina was trying to get rid of Black people basically entirely. It was illegal for white people to have abolitionist literature, and like, that could get you killed. We've seen appearances of the Night Riders. We've also talked about how Southerners were putting out ads for Eastern European and Irish and etc. immigrants to have a very small wage to do the work in the fields that was originally done by enslaved folks. They thought like, oh, it's a necessary evil to have them around, but hey, if we can like pay a little bit and not have to have these things that we don't see as people around, let's do that. One subject matter that I didn't know was going to be talked about in this book is the medical practices that were being tested on enslaved people. We didn't see a lot of things in detail, but just hearing about it was pretty harrowing. We have just been, I was going to say chugging along, did not intend that pun, but we have just been like, go, next thing. And like, we're on to our fourth thing. And it's like 50% of the way through the book. There's more different settings and everything that we're seeing because we're not staying on the Underground Railroad for long. She's only on there for a little bit. She's going from stop to stop, which, like I said before, it's being shown as an actual train this time. It does beg the question to me, is this speculative fiction? I think I thought it was when they said, oh, it's an actual train. It's not a magical train. Like, they wouldn't have had the technology to make a proper underground train system at the time, but I don't know that that makes it speculative fiction. I'd like to know what your thoughts on that are. I mean, I remember when I was reading Masquerade by O.O. Sangoyomi, I'm like, calling that a fantasy book is wrong. Calling it speculative fiction, sure, okay, these countries are made up. I would say that's speculative, but it's an entirely realistic story. I think my experience with the audiobook has been a little bit better. I think I've gotten used to it a little bit more, so I feel like I'm absorbing it better. I think it's a little bit more focused on the physical journey that Cora is taking, rather than necessarily like Cora as a character. I'm having a good time so far, and it is so nice outside. It is record high outside, which is crazy because a month ago we had record snow. We've killed our planet. And I literally put shorts on as soon as I got home, and I am sweating in my house. I might go sit out on my porch and do my reading for the day. And I have no idea what my weekend's gonna be like, except I have my friend's bridal shower, and I'm going to help set up and put away for that, so that's going to take up a lot of my afternoon tomorrow. But otherwise, I don't even know if Austin's going to be here this weekend, so I might just get a lot of stuff done, or I might sleep. That's a possibility too. Hi, I have finished The Underground Railroad. It's what to say. I don't think the audiobook was the way for me to enjoy this book the most. I just did not want to turn on the audiobook again. Right after that, the next audiobook that I listened to, I have been much more interested in finishing. So I actually do think the quality of the audiobook, and maybe if you listen to the quality of the audiobook, the sound won't be the way that it is in this. I want to say the audio is compressed. I've probably said this before, but I think that this book is a plot book, or a sort of tour through different locations kind of journey, physical journey book, rather than an interior character book. Having a distance between the character and myself, maybe not as invested in this book as I would have liked. I have learned over the years, character and the perspective that a book is written from is so vital to my experience of reading a book. But this book it doesn't have a large focus on Cora herself. It's more on the situations that Cora is in. And I would say that the main thing that this book is about, it was showing how slavery at the exact same time existed differently in different places. Or rather, like the experiences of a Black person would be wildly different in different areas. It was not a monolith. It's talking about the experiences of people who are enslaved on plantations. Yes, that is something that we hear about all the time. It is talking about the runaway experience. It's talking about freed people. It is talking about the governmental experiment of having all of these. I don't think I mentioned like what the setup of this little town that she's in. The government essentially owned all of these people and they were allowed their own community, and they were taken advantage of in a lot of different ways in that community. Taken advantage of is a very polite way of putting it. That's what I was talking about with like the doctor experiments and everything. Stuff to do with syphilis, stuff to do with the beginnings of the OBGYN field. People were experimented on without their consent and everything. And then we go into areas where maybe we don't have as many people who are enslaved in the area because the Klan has been so prevalent and they are simply wanting to exterminate Black people. Them being enslaved is not cruel enough. They have to be killed in very public ways. We just see the range of lives that a person could live through Cora as she goes to all of these different places. I'm gonna be honest, I thought the railroad was gonna be a bigger part of it. I don't know that there's that much of a difference of it being an actual train, that is the pitch of the book. I think this book was well written. I think that this book was pointing out a lot of historical moments and was linking them together in a smoother way. I think I would have been more invested in this book if it was longer. Overall, this was the book that I was anticipating was going to be a 5-star of the 3 books I read in this video. I think we just covered a lot and it felt like we were like skipping through time. And I have said on many an occasion, that is something that is really going to take me out of the narrative of a story and make me care less, is when you're real choppy and we're skipping through time a lot. So I would still recommend this if people were looking for something like this, but we still don't have a U 5-star. So let's move on to our final book, Unruly. I am 100 pages into Unruly. I actually haven't checked how long this book is. At the very back of the book, there's bonus chapters. It's like an after credits scene. There is a chapter called Bookend, and then there's further reading, and then there's acknowledgments, and then there's the index, and then there's bonus chapters. I've never read a nonfiction with bonus chapters. Hold up. I just want to say, I flipped to the further reading page, and it says, at this point, I'd probably recommend a thriller, really, or a whodunit, maybe even a graphic novel, for a bit of variety. You must feel up to your ears in history, but that's not the form in these sections. They tend to work like Amazon algorithms. Seeing as you just bought gardening gloves, perhaps you'd be interested in these gardening gloves? David Mitchell is a comedian that I'm familiar with because of the British panel scene. I didn't have like mega high hopes for this book. I don't know what exactly I was expecting, but like I'm genuinely finding this book funny and also educational. And it is doing a very broad strokes picture because it's taking place over the course of like 1,000 years. It started out post-Roman after they've left. We don't get much talk in the Dark Ages, so we really kind of pick up, 600 or something like that. And we've been hanging out around a lot of time in right around the year 1000. And at the 100-page mark, we have finally arrived at 1066. So right now we've mostly been talking about all the Anglo-Saxon kings and the Norse invasions and Vikings and stuff, as well as the Norman invasions that keep happening and all of the different fighting that keeps happening among all these different groups of people. There's a couple of different maps at the beginning of the book showing the British Isles over time. In the middle of the book, there's a lot of pictures, which the thing that's strange is that they actually aren't in order, and I wonder if that was a printing error. It starts at like number 35 and then goes up to 56, and then goes to 1. I'm going to assume that that's a printing error, because I can't imagine that was done on purpose. But I'm just having a lot of fun I don't know what else to say about a nonfiction, but like it's not necessarily like written at a really low reading level. It's just being put in terms that you would talk to your friend while also like having an understanding of the political situations at the time and being like, yeah, these people weren't really kings. They didn't act like kings as we know them. They were acting like gang bosses and stuff like that, and kind of giving some more context to things that we might not know about, which as a person who was not raised in England, like our schooling did not really cover English history that did not have immediate relevance to America. Like, yeah, we learned about the Magna Carta, we learned about like the serfs and stuff. We learned more about an era and less about like specific historical events like battles. Nobody who went to my school knew about the Battle of Hastings. I guarantee it. I know when I was in Latin class and my teacher had us like practicing Roman numerals, one of the years that she put on the boards to practice was 1066, and I was the only one that raised my hand knowing the significance of that date. But I really was thinking of 1066, the Doomsday Book I gave to history, like doing the horrible histories bit of it. But studying Shakespeare, like I have a knowledge of like Elizabethan era England, but like there's a lot of bits of it that I don't have filled in. This has been fun and approachable so far, which is what I wanted. Like, I didn't want this to be a nonfiction that I didn't want to continue picking up, but I actually am looking forward to continuing it. So, my question to myself is, however, what would make this book a 5-star to me? I feel like you would have to be like world-changing, and I don't think this book is going to be world-changing to me, but I'm having a really good time, and I'm glad that I was given an opportunity to read this like well before I would have. I believe I probably would have read this in November for Nonfiction November this year because it's like one of the only nonfictions that I own that I haven't read. If you would be interested in listening to a podcast that is about this sort of subject matter that's talked about in a more like friend to friend way, I think that this book is something you could pick up. Also, you could pick up the audiobook. I don't know if it's narrated by him. I actually couldn't get the audiobook from my library. It's has too long of a wait, and I'm actually kind of surprised. Good for him. I bet I'm the only YouTuber reading this book right now. Yes, I already showed you my alphabet of 5 stars. I've already proven that I've gotten a 5-star out of every letter except for you so far. Hopefully we'll get one by the end of this video. But what I didn't do is give you my ideal A to Z. I have to pick my favorite book from that letter, and I'm not allowed to repeat authors. That's my only rule. And I think I've come up with this. There are some letters that were really difficult in terms of having so many absolute favorites, and some that were really difficult in having books that I'm like, should I even qualify this as a favorite? Especially in terms of the author rule. The author rule made this so much harder because like picking my favorite book by that author and putting it for a different letter sometimes screwed me over for putting it somewhere else. So let me show you what my A to Z would be. So I'm going to start off with A, with The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. Then for B, we have one of my favorite books of all time, Bunny by Mona Awad. C, another like top 5 favorite of all time, The Color Purple by Alice Walker. A very formative book for my reading experience, Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. Then we have The X Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon, which I did give 5 stars. There were other books on that list that like I swear I gave 5 stars and then I look back at them and I didn't. Books by other authors that I gave 5 stars that are on this list that had E's, and I was like, okay. For F, I'm going to go for A Feast for Crows by George R.R. Martin. Then G and H were maybe the hardest letters, and I don't know why. Like, they had so many all-time favorites from authors that were not repeated elsewhere. So for G, I believe I am going to go for A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. For H, I'm going to go for Homegoing by Ya Jessie. For I, we have I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. For J, we have Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. For K, we have first adult romance I ever gave a 5-star, and that's The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. L, The Lightning Thief. Of course, Percy Jackson had to be on this list. For M, we have The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa, one of my favorite books of last year. For N, we have Normal People by Sally Rooney. For O, we have Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. For P, we have Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, another one of my all-time favorites. For Q, we have The Queen of the Tierling by Erica Johansson. For R, I'm picking Ready or Not by Kara Bastone. For S, I'm going Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, which is just like set up what I love about time travel. For T, I'm going to go with The Traitor Queen by Danielle L. Jensen. I feel like I have like an inordinate amount of romance on this list. For U, we don't have anything yet. For V, I'm putting Vampires of Al Norte. For W, I'm putting The Will of the Many by James Islington. For X, we have The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. For Y, we have Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. For Z, we have the only Z starting word I have for a 5-star. That's I Killed Zoe Spanos, which I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know that I don't think that that is a book that if I read it today, I would give it 5 stars, but I did at the time give it 5 stars. Let me know if I have to do a Z video now. Maybe I need to reevaluate some of these. And then I also wanted to add numbers. 11, 22, 63 would be my pick for numbers. So these are all books that I at least have as 5-star on Goodreads. So that's my perfect alphabet. Hello. New angle just dropped because I have an actually presentable entertainment center. I bought this like a month ago. We put it together. I think that we put this together Valentine's Day weekend. And it also is a heater. It's great. But I thought I'd update you. I'm over the 3/4 mark of the way through Unruly. I don't know that I need to update you, especially because it's not like a plot thing. But at the point that I've gotten to, we are now fully into the War of the Roses. What king am I at? King Edward IV has just been crowned, even though King Henry VI is still alive. So I have been thoroughly enjoying my time with this book. I think that this is well done. There's a lot that I did not know that this is talking about. A lot of, like I've said before, a lot of my knowledge of like battles or dates or kings, like almost all of that is coming from Horrible History. So like, yeah, I've heard of Agincourt. I didn't actually know what it was. This has such a good tone. It does the right amount of telling you actual information and having fun with that information. I have actually decided to start taking notes during the book, and honestly, it happened a little bit too late because I know that if I just like read it and don't write anything down, that I'm not actually going to retain who the people are to the information I gathered, because there's a lot of information here. Sometimes the chapters are short, sometimes they don't have a lot of different like, you know, dates or events, and it's more like the vibe of what this guy was doing, that like this was the attitude that this person brought to the seat of the king. Like how Henry IV and Henry VI both made people not trust the monarchy by their actions, versus Henry V and him having a very successful military campaign was one who brought faith to the Lancaster line and people trusting the monarchy to begin with. It's drawing a through line of how we choose kings and why the ruler is the ruler. And when there are times that a ruler is chosen, why are they chosen? And I think that that's been interesting to see an evolution over time, how before William the Conqueror, it was more of like, you know, whoever was a gang boss. We don't start out with primogeniture because William the Conqueror's first son, though alive, was not his heir. Henry I making up a bullshit rule of why he should be king instead of his older brother. At this time, because everything is so violent, if you don't have a very set reason why someone is the heir, it is going to end in a bloodbath. So it's good to have a stable line, and that's why you want to have like that set first kid. But like, believe it or not, someone being your firstborn son does not make them qualified to lead anyone. And I did go back and rewatch the video that I believe the channel is History Hit. I'd actually seen some of this guy's videos before. Dan Snow, I believe, is the host of this channel. But the video that I had seen that showed me that this book exists, he was asked like a couple of questions that I thought were kind of interesting that I wanted to talk about. Why this selection of time? There's kind of two reasons to why we stop at Elizabeth I and also why we start so early. This is supposed to be a brief history of England through the lens of the monarchs. Why the monarchs and why at this time? Because when you're talking about this time that this is talking about, the main political movement is the ruler, in a way that when you get into Victorian times, there starts being a lot more complication in the levels, that the person who is the ruler is not the end all be all of what is going on politically. So he's trying to talk about the time in which England's rulers were the massive political movement. And the reason it stops with Elizabeth I is because if this is supposed to be about England, with the death of Elizabeth I comes the Stuart line coming down from Scotland. Those 2 points of why this section of time was interesting. I have also seen reviews of this book saying that the audiobook of it is fantastic, and I did end up sampling it. It is narrated by David Mitchell. So if you particularly are a fan of him, or you want to hear like the sarcasm and everything, the biting tone to it, I think that the audiobook of this would be very good. I'm excited to get into the War of the Roses, which it's already begun, but we've had like our first change, because I remember watching Horrible Histories, the reports, like the Bob Hale reports, were some of my favorite bits in the show, and I have watched the War of the Roses report so many times. One of my most watched Horrible Histories things ever, which is a stupid reason to like it, but it's because it's interesting. And it's also interesting, now that I think about it, because if you did not know, Game of Thrones is inspired by the War of the Roses. Lannister is Lancaster, and Stark is York. This is definitely making me want to read more in this subject matter, maybe focusing on something more specific, but there is a different nonfiction that I own that is The Wives of King Henry VIII by Alison Weir, which is a nonfiction that was suggested to me by my Shakespeare professor. And I have actually read, she has a fiction series, if you're interested in it, that is a historical fiction of all of Henry VIII's queens. I have read the Catherine of Aragon book, and I thought it was dry. Maybe her nonfiction will be more interesting. I won't hold my breath, but it would definitely be less detailed per queen than the fiction books are, because it's one thick book for 6 queens versus one slightly less thick book for 1 queen. After this, that might have to move up my nonfiction TBR, especially because I own it. I'm sure I won't have much to say other than this by the end of it, but I'm just having a really good time with this, and if you are interested in this era of history, definitely recommending it. As soon as I finish this, I'm probably going to be giving this to my dad for him to read, because I think he would enjoy it.
Hello, I am currently packing to head home, but I did finish Unruly by David Mitchell. The whole thing that I told you in that YouTube video where it was like why he wrote the book about this time period and everything and why the rulers were so important actually is like the afterword of the book. Oops. But I just generally had a good time with this. I started taking notes by the end of the book. I wish I had done it for the whole thing, and while this book is still in my mind, I might try to go back and do that, like skim through the chapters and take notes. I think that this was like the right bite-size amount of information for all the different rulers, and I think that it gave me a pretty good idea of how the idea of monarchy had changed over the course of England. I also liked his insights into why the monarchy is so ingrained into the idea of being English. I thought that was an interesting conversation, and I just had a good time. Also, whoever designed this cover, I think very good idea. I would totally recommend this. My question is, like, what would a 5-star version of this book look like? I think that this is basically as high of a rating. I don't know what I'm going to give this. It's also a nonfiction. I don't rate all of the nonfiction that I read, so I don't know exactly what to rate it, but I do think that this is like a success. We found like one of my favorite books that start with a U of all time. I would say that my other 2 favorites, having just looked at the list, would be The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke, which was a 4.25-ish, and probably about the same rating for Us Against You. So I think this is definitely up there. Is this a full 5-star? I don't know. Do you guys think that I have to keep reading? Do I need to make a sequel vlog to this in which I read
your favorite books that start with a U, if there are any. Please let me know if I have not finished this vlog idea yet. We'll see, but I think that this could easily make itself into my favorite nonfiction books of the year. By the end of this video, we had a book that met expectations with The Unworthy, a book that wasn't quite where I thought it was going to be with The Underground Railroad, and a book that did exceed my expectations with Unruly. So please let me know down below your favorite U books and if you want me to do another one of these videos. And if you don't have anything to say and you've made it the whole way through the video, why not leave me a crown in honor of Unruly? Thank you all so much for watching. If you'd like to find me anywhere on the internet or use any of the bookish services that I use, you can use the links in the description. And if you'd like to keep watching my videos, you can hit the subscribe button. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.